Work together 4-4 is going to make your head spin a little bit. Basically, what we have in Work Together 4-4 is we've had a business that's been in operation. They have journalized some transactions. They have posted their transactions. And then they found out, oops, they made a mistake. Okay? And it's important for you to realize that they had journalized and they had posted. And what they had found is they accidentally had put a transaction into the wrong account. Okay, so let's say, for example, I accidentally recorded it to accounts receivable Forrest Grassel instead of accounts receivable Gordon Grassel. So what we have to do is we have to fix that entry. We're going to fix that entry with a correcting entry. So that's going to be an entry that we're going to put in the journal. And what we have to do is we have to look at that transaction and figure out what was affected that should not have been. So if we take a look at it and what was affected was rent expense and it should not have been, what would we do to rent expense then? We don't cross it out. We have to make a brand new entry. We would have to make rent expense go down. What is the increase side of the rent expense? Thank you. Good to know we know that because we just had that in T account. So all expenses are going to be increased as a debit. Would you agree? So if I accidentally affected one expense account and it was the wrong one, I'm going to need actually that expense account to go down so I would actually credit it. So you have to figure out what account is affected that should not have been, and then do the opposite of what you did originally. So when we read the first transaction for 4-4, it says, discovered that a transaction for supplies bought last month was journalized and posted as an error to debit to prepaid insurance instead of supplies. So what account was affected that should not have been? Thank you. See, he's got that. He's on the ball here this morning. I like that. So prepaid insurance was affected and should not have been. It was originally debited. Would you agree? Do you see how you can determine that? So if it was originally debited and it should not have been, what do I need to do to prepaid insurance? The opposite, which would be credit, correct? So if prepaid insurance is going to be credited, what's going to be debited? Supplies. That's our first transaction. So we're journalizing each correcting entry discovered during November of the current year, and we're using page 21 of a journal. So, and we can find that the journal page is already done up there for us. So we just have to start with the date, and we're going to put in there November 1st. We're going to be debiting supplies. Source document is M15 for 60. Prepaid insurance is going to be credited for 60. The second November 1st. Discovered that a transaction for rent expense last month was journalized and posted in an error as a debit to repair expense instead of rent expense. So rent expense was affected and should not have been. Rent expense was originally debited. So we need to get it out of rent expense. So what do we have to do to rent expense? Debit or credit? Anyone? Credit. Thank you. So we're going to credit rent expense, but what are we going to debit? Did I just say it backwards? Yeah. I did just say it backwards. Sorry. It should come out of repair and go into rent. Sorry, I explained it backwards. That's not a good teacher moment for me. So repair expense should be credited and rent expense should be debited. Source document is M16 for $550. Repair expense is going to be credited for $550 because it said as a debit to repair expense, so we have to fix that. I'm going to check my answer. I got them all right. Almost got the last one wrong until I reread that one. Go ahead and try the on your own.